It grieves me that Lavoie lost his life over this protest. And don't we wish we could push this genie back in the bottle? But it has happened, and so now we look forward and say, okay, how is this going to go from here? And if you recall, there was a fellow who revolted against slavery in the state of Kansas prior to the Civil War, Mr. John Brown. Now his picture is painted on the Capitol wall, and he died in the process. And of course, Kansas ended up becoming a union state in order to bring to an end this condition of slavery. And so maybe Lavoie Finicum's life will not be a life that is wasted, but a life that was given blood on the soil to restore the soil in the western states to their rightful owners, which is really the individual states and not the federal government.
Well, I'll tell you, it is. I very much appreciate it, Stephen, that you give such an excellent analysis in the legal mind that you have. It's brilliant. Of course, I have my favorite niece on my knee listening in to this discussion, and this lady up here is a hero that every American woman should follow. And she is going to take your story, Victoria, to her current events class in school, and she is going to present it. And she is going to tell all the kids and her teacher, here's what happened in Oregon, and here's what it means to us as patriots and citizens of the United States. And wow. Every American citizen should have their daughters and sons and nieces and nephews watching this program, watching this link, and taking this to their school and talking about this. Because we are not going to raise up a generation of cowards and weaklings and retards. We are generating a population of the future with leaders and heroes. And Victoria, you are a role model for this little future Mockingjay warrior. And I know to all of the rest of this population. So, Stephen, that's a brilliant analysis. And one of the other things that hit me was they fired bullets at this car at the beginning, at the first roadblock. So they took off to protect their property and their lives. And they didn't have a warrant. They had no reason to stop them. But you're right. All of this needs to be legally presented in the right way and at the right time so the bad guys can't defend. One other thing that Ghost has informed me about that he can inform us more was Shauna's brother-in-law. Was it brother-in-law or brother who was killed in a? Do you want to talk about that, Ghost? The killing, because it adds another dimension to this that should be part of the trial in the course of the legal system.
Yeah, I agree. When Shauna was released from prison, they put her on prison, I should say, from jail. They put an ankle monitor on her, and they called her husband, and they said that she could not have guns in the house. So he complied. They took the weapons over to their daughter or their son-in-law's house. They put them in the barn. It was either that evening or the next day that barn caught on fire and burned the barn down and all the weapons and killed her son-in-law inside. We can run conspiracy theories, but we've got to wait for the investigation to find out how that started, and if it was accidental or was arson. But it brings up a question.
It certainly does. It certainly does bring up a question that this needs to be expanded. And of course, the other thing to mention to Stephen is that the entire scene was sanitized. The entire scene where this event took place, where the truck was stopped in the snowbank, where there would have been blood, there would have been bullets, there would have been trajectory of the bullets where they were fired, there would have been footprints, there would have been all sorts of evidence that should have been examined by the state of Oregon. And in fact, that's another justification to say this was a complete fiasco and all of the criminal investigation was mishandled. But talk about the sterilization of that scene that happened. What should they have found, and what did they do?
Well, the sterilization of the scene is really inordinate. I mean, they really have a duty to maintain the scene, and in particular, you see it quite often in police work. They'll fence it off, right? They'll fence off the area and retain the site of what occurred. so that photographs can be taken, forensic audits can be done, all of those things, right? To come in and clean the scene, I don't know what FBI protocols are, but if you recall, we saw a similar scene in Waco, and where the whole facility was bladed, and there 53 women and children were hunkered down in the school bus underground, and CS gas was dropped down in their air vents, which is prohibited, by the way, under the Geneva Convention. And they were killed in the bus, and then of course the whole thing was bladed, and so there could be no forensic audit. And of course, who has the responsibility at this point to do the forensic audit? I mean, that's a question. And the answer is really the state authorities are the ones that have the duty to do the audit. The state authorities, probably the state police would be the ones, or the county sheriff would be the ones that would be equipped to go out and do the audit of the area and take forensic data. And that would include, shell casings, tire prints, trajectories of the bullets, the vehicle that had been shot. All of those things needed to be photographed, retained, and all of that. And then, of course, the evidence there has to be a chain of evidence that's associated with it. There has to be a controlling of the evidence. And, unless that's in place, then you have a corrupted scene. You have a corrupted scene of the event, and seriously corrupted. And so those kinds of problems are significant because, of course, once the scene has been cleansed, the defendants have no capability of proving, so many of the forensic aspects of what actually occurred. And so it's a big problem. We had the same thing happen in Oklahoma City, where there was questions about whether or not there were 2 detonations that took place in Oklahoma City. And as soon as it came out that the rebar was blown outward from the building, well, then the building was destroyed. And everybody recalls those events. And so what you see this idea of cleansing the site to allow the prosecution to control the story. It allows the prosecution to control the storyline. And by doing so, by controlling the storyline, they can ensure a conviction. But what takes place is that the government has a duty to maintain exculpatory evidence. Any evidence that is capable of exonerating a defendant is exculpatory, and there's long-standing legal precedent that exculpatory evidence has to be maintained and it has to be provided. And so to willfully destroy the scene of the event is very interesting. And it also probably is equal to, let me put it to you this way. There's federal laws that say in the course of an investigation, if you tamper with evidence, you're committing a crime. Now, what we see so much now in the criminal justice system is we see misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance, where some crimes are prosecuted and other crimes aren't. I was doing a federal trial. In the middle of the trial, we had an action against a local police department, and it depended upon a prior case that had taken place in a local court. During the pendency of the trial, the court clerk destroyed the entire file at the state level. And if it had been me, if I had destroyed somebody's complete file, I'd be in jail. And so, you have, there's one law for us outside the system, and there's another law for those inside the system. And that kind of, and this is where the real destruction comes. And I'm just going to say this, and then I'm going to shut up. But here's where you see a real destruction in American jurisprudence. The 14th Amendment is designed to provide for equal protection of the laws and to provide that inside of the states. The Fifth Amendment provides for equal protection of the laws in regard to the federal government. But either way, you have equal protection, which is constitutionally protected. We don't have a right to equal results, but we have a right to equal protection under the law. As it used to be said when I was a kid, no man and no woman is above the law. But you can see that disposition is completely gone in the United States right now, where somebody like Hillary Clinton can commit felony on felony on felony on felony on felony. They know that just having an email server outside of the federal government for her federal use is a felony. Accepting gifts from foreign powers while she's holding a federal position is a felony. Maintaining top secret emails on an outside server is espionage. I mean, these things are, these are dramatic, and each one of the 1,800 emails that we know about constitutes a serious felony under federal law. No indictment, no charges. Mr. Obama can commit open treason.